you are married, your spouse is your God-given gift. You have a responsibility not just to her or to him, but to God himself, to dedicate whatever is required to be the best you can be. Excellence, even in marriage, honors God and inspires people. Who doesn't marvel at the couple who figures out how to navigate hard times, do it with joy, make it with unity, love each other along the way, and thrive in their life together? Should they be the exception? No. There is a most excellent way to get there. That, of course, is the unmistakable prose of one Brian C. Hughes from his message on marriage, February 12th, all the way back in 2012. Brian is here. Say hello.
Hey, I'm really excited about this. Is one of my favorite topics.
And that is a good introduction to what we're going to be talking about over the next 8 episodes or so of this brand new podcast, Between Sundays with Brian Hughes. Just to give you a little bit of a synopsis of what's going to be going on, as you'll learn over the course of this podcast, or as you already know because you're a part of Brian's church, Passion Community Church in Central Virginia. He is a pastor of a church, and his life calling is to help people and guide people toward Jesus, toward Christ, and he's done a lot of that amazing work through PCC, as we call it around here. But you just can't do all of that on a Sunday morning. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of stuff you just can't talk about because you don't have time, or just needs more explanation than you can give in a 28-minute or 30-minute message than we would do. So this podcast is going to be a chance for Brian and maybe occasionally myself and some others to talk about things Brian's passionate about, things that he's learned over the course of his life, and marriage being a thing, as you mentioned, that you're extremely passionate about. Why don't, before we dive into the specific topic we're going to look at for today, you talk about really your passion for marriage. I know obviously you're a married man, but you have, it feels like an increased passion on marriage. Where does that come from?
Well, I think, for me, it came from, when we got married, I didn't have any healthy role models, at least in close proximity to me. My parents divorced, and it was ugly and it was messy. And when my mom remarried, that was also ugly, and I just didn't have any healthy role models. And as a young man, we were married. Susan and I got married when we were 19 years old. I thought, like most 19-year-olds do, that I knew what to do. I knew how to make marriage amazing and all the things. Because when you're that age, you just kind of think you know everything, and at least I did. But the truth is, along the way, I realized I really don't know how to do this. We went, when we started going to church, which is another story for another episode. When we started going to church, they invited us to come on a marriage retreat. I had never heard of such a thing. I didn't know people did such things, but I kind of had grown to trust these people. And so we went away to this retreat center in the mountains of Virginia, and there were probably, 20 or 30 other people there, and they had, it was pretty low key. They did some presentation time and a lot of talk time, and it's where I started to realize I have a lot to learn in terms of this marriage thing, and I had other people for the first time in my life around me who were modeling what it must look. I mean, I could look at them and say, wow, they have something I don't have. We were married. We were legally married. And there were some components of it that, looked like marriage, but I realized there was something missing. And I could see it, and I could say, whatever that is, I want to go after that. So we started diving in and becoming real students of marriage together. Susan also, I felt like she had a lot to learn. I think she would agree that I was far more messed up than she was, but I think we both knew we had a lot of room to grow in this. Yeah. And we just became students of it. And then I think once we realized, oh my gosh, this is really good, which took a long time, by the way, because did I mention I was really messed up? Once we got to that place, I coined this phrase that I say all the time now, that there is nothing as great as marriage when marriage is working right. And that really is true. It also implies that Marriage doesn't always work right.
Right.
But that's why I became so passionate about it. Once I realized, gosh, this is so good. It's so good. And I put that against, if I can just be honest, all of these marriages that I know that are not. And I thought, man, you've got to do what you can to help these people experience what God always wanted them. He always dreamed about this when it came to marriage. And you got to help them get there. And that's part of why I became so passionate about it. I have it. I could be selfish about it and not care, but I really care deeply that people around me, married couples around me, are able to experience what we've been able to experience. And I think they can. I think people look at us and think, well, Brian and Susan just got lucky, or God just blessed them, or all they do is chant and pray all day, which is ridiculous, by the way.
Right.
But because we fight and disagree but we've learned how to do just about everything. I can't think of any area of our marriage that we haven't figured out how to do in a healthy way that honors God.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of just the age-old truth about marriage anyway, is just the, I guess, misconception that it doesn't take a ton of work.
Oh my
and
gosh.
That it's one of those things that a lot of people realize once they're just in the midst of it.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's actually where I would assume the topic for today, the book we're going to look at today, that's a very famous book about this, called The 5 Love Languages. I assume it's born out of that it's just one of those things where you just have all these assumptions about what a relationship is going to be, when really it's not that. And this book has become like an enduring sort of all-time book and conversation about this, because it takes what I think really is a simple concept, but unpacks it and puts it in a digestible package, being the 5 love languages. The idea that we all speak a different love language.
Yes.
And until we learn that about each other, it's going to be really hard to do it. So you wanted to talk about this?
Yeah.
So I'd love for you to unpack.
Yeah. So it was one of the first books. Let me just sort of give a bit of a larger perspective here. We still read every book we can get on marriage. I think the day that this applies to any area of life, but I think people assume it doesn't apply to marriage. And that is that if you stop growing, you start dying. Like, you have to keep pushing forward. And this is the thing that kind of always surprises me, and if I'm honest, maybe frustrates me a little bit. No one argues about taking continuing education if you're a firefighter or a paramedic or a school teacher or you're a musician. Musicians we know how to a path forward to get better. We do this in every area of our lives, except we think we don't have to keep learning when we get married.
Right.
And I think it's just silly. If we stand back and look at it, we'll realize it's silly. So what we've done, Susan and I have taken the path that says we want to just keep learning. Keep learning. I've been married for 36 years. You would think. I think it's easy for people to think, well, gosh, I think he's probably an expert on this now, or an idiot, one or the other, or maybe both. But either way, he can stop learning. But we don't stop learning. We just want to keep growing. So we decided to digest every book we could on marriage and pay attention to authors that we respect and speakers and that kind of thing. So early on, one of the first books we learned about was The 5 Love Languages, which for the listener who has not read this book, it's so entertaining. It's not hard to read. It's fun.
Right.
But the premise of it is super simple. And I'm going to come back to something you said a minute ago about it. The idea that Gary Chapman teaches is that we each speak love in a different way, and primarily one of 5 ways. Now, he says we all speak all 5 languages, but we have a natural language that we speak. And those 5 languages are quality time. Some people receive love as in how they give time or receive time, words of affirmation, gifts, physical touch, which he goes out of his way to say is not sexual, right. And then acts of service. And so you said, when we learn, we have to learn the other person's language. I would say, yes, that's the first stop on the train, is learning and understanding. But the real work is it is unnatural then, or less intuitive for you to speak your spouse's language.
Right.
Because your go-to is to speak your language. Here's an example. Susan and I, most couples have different love languages.
Mm-hmm.
My love language, not surprisingly, is words of affirmation. I'm a words person. I thrive on words. If you get me a birthday card at the the drugstore or the Hallmark store, wherever, you get me a birthday card and it's got all the words that somebody printed in a factory in it, and you just sign your name, all due respect, that really means nothing to me.
Right.
But if you write a personal note to me in that card and you say, Brian, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you, and here's why, I will never throw it away. I have every personal note anyone has ever given to me, because that just matters to me. For Susan, words are cheap. She couldn't care less. And her love language is quality time. She doesn't want a lot of words. She wants you to sit with her. She wants you to do something experiential with her. She wants you to be with her. Well, we had to learn this the hard way, because I needed her to say things like, I'm your biggest fan. I'm your biggest cheerleader. I believe in you. You can do this. And I was saying those things to her, but they didn't mean anything to her. And she was spending time with me, but that meant a lot less to me. So eventually we learned to value and speak each other's language. Now, to this day, it is very common for her to leave me a little note, a little sticky, just a little couple of words on a sticky. You say, I believe in you. Or if she knows I'm going to have a hard day, she'll say, you've got this. I know you've got this. That means the world to me. And I've gone out of my way to make sure that I carve out a significant amount of time that I can dedicate and focus on her, because that matters to her. So in a marriage where you've got these opposing feelings of love, you've got this wife who's saying to her husband, I feel like you don't love me. And he says, what do you mean I don't love you? I washed your car. I did the dishes for you. I took the kids to school. What he's saying is his love language is acts of service, and he's speaking it.
Yep.
But her love language is something else, and she's dying. Even though he's saying I love you, she's not receiving it, because you have to figure out what each other's love language is and speak their language, not your language. That's where and that's the hard part.
Right. Because the argument the book makes is your natural tendency. What feels natural is to just love someone the way you would want to be loved.
That's right.
I mean, it even sounds kind of like the golden rule we talk about.
That's
Treat
right.
others the way you want to be treated.
That's right.
And to your point, and to the book's point, we all need a little bit of it.
Yeah.
But we have the primary area. Right. My wife's is definitely quality time. Definitely quality time. Whereas I'm like you. I do have a question for you, though.
Okay.
Have you noticed, because I would have said at the beginning of my relationship with Megan that my love language was probably more like physical touch. Just like, lean the head on the shoulder, hold hands or whatever. Even though I felt like there was a time and a place for it. When it was us, though, that's kind of what I wanted. But I feel like I've shifted in my life. Do you feel like that happens?
I don't know, Elijah. I tell you, the example that you're giving is a little challenging, and I'll tell you why. Because when you're new, when your relationship is still fresh and new, that is just the natural thing. You just love to be together and hold hands and
honeymoon
stuff. And all that stuff. And also, for if we're being honest about this, which I love to do, I think the water is always muddy when it comes to physical touch and guys. I think that's always challenging, because when you're a young guy and you're a young guy who's married, it sure is hard to separate physical touch from sexual. Sure. I mean, it just kind of all runs together. Right. Susan, I remember when we were first married, she was like, anything at all one thing would lead to another. She's afraid to hold my hand, I think.
Right. Just brush by you in the kitchen.
Just brush by me. Yeah. And I think, things do change over time as you get older, but I wonder about that. I do. For me, words are no less powerful today than they've ever been. They still are really potent for me. So I'm not sure. there's a lot of study about personality. Does personality change? If you take one of these personality tests, does it alter over time or is it circumstantial? I don't know. But I do think for the most part, maybe our emphases in love languages shift a little, but I'm not positive. I'm not saying it can't be. But,
No, it's probably more a case of, and this is my actual line of thinking on it, more of the case of like, even though the book is talking about primarily sort of learning your spouse's love language and then learning to speak that language naturally, there's a part of self-discovery I think you go through as well.
Yes.
In terms of figuring out your own love language.
Yes.
Because like I think at this point, mine is also words of affirmation. And I think that part of that though ties into, some of my thinking is part of that ties into, well, then I wasn't doing many things. You said you're a words guy. I wasn't doing a ton of things in that way, more playing music and things like that. But now I do use a lot of words and following a similar path, at least in teaching and things like that. And so they've become more meaningful to me. I've maybe just more realized their power.
Yeah.
And so like, maybe that is influenced, but maybe it was one of those things where that was probably there all along. And I am just in a new season of life and more discovering as I did before.
I do think it's helpful when for people you'd be surprised how many people that I talk to even today who either have never read this book or I have this conversation a lot because if I'm meeting with a couple, I'll say, have you guys ever done 5 love languages? And I'm surprised how many times somebody will say, well, yeah, we read that book. And I'll say, oh, well, what's your love language? And they'll be like, yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah.
So I always think, well, maybe you should read it again. I mean,
right.
I never forgot what Susan's love language was. She never forgot what mine was. We put that into practice. So I do think that even for the person who says, oh, I've done this before, it'd be like you and me saying, yeah, I read the Bible. I've already done that.
Sure.
Check.
Right.
That's silly. We have to keep cultivating this knowledge. It also is helpful, not just in your marriage, but with other people in your life. And, this has been helpful with my kids. It's been helpful with other people that I know, people I work with. And we also can lean into people who have a gift that you don't when you need it. For example, every once in a while, we'll do some church gathering where we'll be, where we're going to leave a little gift for people. Every once in a while, we do like a dinner or something. We'll say, we're going to leave a gift for, and they always come in my office. This is always the funniest conversation. They'll come in my office and they'll say, what gift do you think we should give to people? And I'll be like, I couldn't care less.
Right.
I don't know. I'm such the wrong person to ask. Susan and I, neither one of us have gifts high on our love language list. So like 3 or 4 years ago, after fighting for years, like internally, like, what am I going to get her for Christmas? And she's thinking, what am I going to get him for Christmas? We just sat down and said, you know what? Can we just skip this now?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you don't need any more jewelry. I don't need any more knickknacks. Please, for the love of God, don't give me another coffee mug. Could we just skip this part?
Yeah.
And let's take a trip. That'll be our Christmas gift or something. And so when you're married to somebody whose love language is different than yours, if you can't figure it out, go find somebody who speaks that language and say, help me, be my consultant on quality time or acts of service or whatever, because it doesn't come naturally. And, I could sit here and say, well, how do you not know that you can wash his car or vacuum the floor for her or whatever? But that's the point. It doesn't naturally come to someone whose love language is not that. So go find somebody and just say, brainstorm some ideas with me of the ways that I can speak love to her in her language, since you share that language with.
And anybody can do anything every so often.
Yes.
The book, any of us can, they say, even a blind squirrel finds a nut every so often, right? We can all, if we're just kind of blissfully unaware of how to do this, every so often we'll just get it right just because we're living it. But obviously the book is saying, no, like consistency in speaking this language is what's going to make your spouse feel loved. So yeah, being intentional about it on a daily basis, not just every so often.
Well, that's right. And I would say putting mechanisms to help you do this. So when I would coach couples, this was always the funniest thing, because I would say, if his maybe she would say, I just wish he would buy me flowers every once in a while. That might lean to the suggestion that she has a love language of gifts.
Right.
I don't know. That not necessarily the case, but it could be. Anyway, and let's say he doesn't naturally think that way. I would look at him in front of her and I would say, put it on your calendar.
Yeah.
Recurring once a month, buy her flowers, whatever. And she would get mad. She would say, well, if he has to remind himself like that, then I don't want that.
Yeah.
And I would say, you're being silly. The thoughtfulness was that he reminded himself.
Right.
And then he took action on it because it matters to you. So get over that this is not a natural response for him. God didn't wire him to think about buying you flowers. That's not how he was built. So he's going to put a mechanism in place to care for you in this way. So what?
Yeah.
So what? He's serving you. He loves you. He's trying to speak your language.
And to your point, that is the way that you're being loved.
That's right.
Is that he decided or she decided that it mattered enough to you for him or her to do it on their calendar. There's a quote from the book that I like. It kind of takes us in a little bit of a different direction.
Okay.
And that's a personal question of you. But the quote is, something in our nature cries out to be loved by another. Isolation is devastating to the human psyche. That is why solitary confinement is considered the cruelest of punishments.
That's right.
Probably not now, but early on, I wonder if you can think of a time where y'all hadn't figured this out yet. Like you weren't speaking each other's language and you were feeling this way, that like she doesn't get me, I'm isolated.
Oh, yeah.
And if you would be willing to talk about it. I know I'm putting you on the spot.
No. I think, I'll be honest with you. I think I can totally relate to the quote. I'd forgotten about that quote, by the way, but I can totally relate to it because you can be in solitary confinement and still sleep in the same bed.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And I did not know how, for probably the first, I don't know how long, 10 or 15 years of our marriage, I did not know how to process my frustration in a healthy way. So the way that I did it was to just go silent. And it robbed her of time. I would give her zero attention and time. I just ignored her. And it's so incredibly hurtful, but also incredibly unhealthy. And so basically it would put both of us in prison. It also, in solitary confinement, it also was a product of the way that conflict happened. So Susan also didn't know how to process in a healthy way because in her family, they did conflict by ignoring it, by pretending it wasn't real. And so she would occasionally she would write a letter to me. And I would want to have like a face-to-face, could we just get this on the table and have a knockdown drag out? Because that's the way my family did it, which was also unhealthy.
Right.
And so because I learned early on, you can't raise your voice with her. That's not going to be productive. And she didn't know how to broach the subject without me being angry. We would just go to our corners emotionally and just shut each other off. And it was so devastating. One time not too long ago, maybe 2-3 years ago, we talked about how much time we wasted with each other by this incredibly unhealthy tactic. And I can tell you, I talked to a lot of couples where this is the way they handle their stuff. And it's just so incredibly unhealthy. And part of it was because I think it's the missing expectation of needs being met.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of it is centered around love languages, particularly, and I'm going to get just slightly off subject here around love languages. It particularly was centered around my focus on my needs, her focus on her needs.
Yeah.
Instead of my focus on her needs and her focus on my needs.
Right. Yeah.
And so we're each trying to gain territory from each other, and it becomes a tug of war. And that usually doesn't work.
No, I would say never works.
Yeah.
In the long run, it never quite works. So what was the breakthrough then? Because you mentioned earlier that obviously at the beginning you mentioned y'all just been students of marriage and you've always been trying to improve, and that when you found this book early on, it just kind of clicked. But I would assume you had to go through some trial and error to figure this out. because I don't know about you, but these books, they come with like some self-assessment stuff in them.
Mm-hmm.
They never work for me. I don't know what
Yeah.
that is. Like just answering questions, and I don't know. It's just not my jam.
Mm.
Maybe it works for y'all, but for Megan and I at least, like we can read it and be like, yeah, that does sound like me.
Mm-hmm.
But I could read any part of any of them and be like, I would like that. You know what I mean? So you just kind of, it sounds like for words you've always just kind of known.
Yeah.
But to then implement it with Susan,
Yeah.
do you remember that taking a while, or was it just like,
Well,
happened?
I think I'll be honest. The secret for me, we're not. It's very hard to compartmentalize your own self. Particularly when it comes to a relationship like a marriage, it's so complex and so intertwined. So it's hard to say, well, there was this one component we figured out in this way.
Right.
You can't just say it was love languages and we sorted out love language. We knew the love language material. We had agreed. I knew what her love language was. She knew what my love language was. We understood this about each other, but we were still unhealthy. And a huge part of that was this pile of mess that was inside of me that came from my family of origin. Now, she had some of that too, but not anything like I had.
Yeah.
So for me, when you ask about the breakthrough came with therapy. When I started going to see a counselor, realizing that there was something deeply broken inside of me, Susan went with me. But it was not marriage counseling. It was really Brian counseling. I knew there was something wrong. I just couldn't figure out what it was. And I sat in this counselor's office pretty much every week for a year. And then went less frequently, but still went for a second year. And those 2 years really helped unpack not just the brokenness inside of me, but the manifestation of that brokenness, which was in no small part lived out in my marriage in the way that we related to each other. And I just can't encourage people enough. I think it's a real shame that we tend to look at marriage counseling like it is, or counseling, and particularly marriage counseling, like it is some major flaw in your character. I think it is a testimony to your character to say, I am going to do whatever is necessary for my marriage to be amazing. And if the pathway to that is for me to be a healthy person, who cares? There's not an ounce of shame anybody feels if they go see an oncologist if they have cancer. Right. And yet somehow we all want to hide under a rock if we feel like we need to go see a marriage counselor, and we'll do everything we can to avoid it. And the alternative is we've got a bunch of unhealthy marriages and people living in misery when the key to thriving may just be an objective, well-trained voice helping you through it. Why would you not avail yourself of such a tool?
Yeah, definitely. It's similar to the thing we were saying about flowers on the calendar earlier. Mm-hmm. Like, for some reason, there's just kind of a stigma around, well, if you didn't think of it organically, it doesn't mean as much.
Right.
Or I think in this case with marriage counseling, or really any kind of counseling, but marriage counseling specifically, it's like, I think people get caught up in, well, if people know I'm going to marriage counseling,
right, now
all of a sudden they might spread rumors about me. Right. They might say this. They might look at us different.
Right.
Then I'm going to have to whatever. And yeah, it's, when you're outside of it, it's really easy to see like, right, well, those are stupid. Those are just dumb thoughts.
Right.
But when you're in it, just like with anything, the vision can be a little cloudy. The thought process can be cloudy.
And I can appreciate that. I would just encourage every couple to just set that aside. The reward for having a great marriage and for being a more healthy person far outweighs the ill-informed judgment of the people around you who think all kinds of things and say things behind. Who cares?
Right. Yeah.
I think we just have to get past all that and say, I'm going to chase after this with everything I've got. And so when people look at me and Susan, and I often say I think I could write a book on the mistakes I've made in my life and all kinds of things that I haven't gotten right. But the one thing I think I did get right was we gave our kids an image of marriage that if they have a marriage like ours, we will feel like we accomplished something great. we gave them something to target. So people will often say to me, I actually have this happen regularly when I do marriage conferences or when I do a marriage message on a Sunday morning at PCC, is someone will reach out and say, we want to figure out how to have a marriage like yours. And I'll say, it requires availing yourself of all the tools. You have to set aside all that other stuff and say, I'm going to chase after this no matter what it takes. For us, that also included some counseling for me, and at times some outside voices coming around us saying, we asking them, help us do this better. We trusted some really close friends to hold us accountable to some things, and that was also super helpful. But I think at the center of it all is this willingness to overcome fear and talk from the outside so that you do whatever it takes. And we were willing to do that. Eventually, we were willing to do that.
Yeah. Well, I think right from the beginning, you probably don't give yourself too credit. Maybe you weren't great at it at the beginning, but I would say right away you had that mentality at least.
Yes.
Like this, we were going to make this work.
Yes.
No matter what, because we made a promise.
Yeah. Well, and we did do that. In a recent message I did at PCC, I talked about on marriage. I talked about removing the D word, taking divorce out completely, not just out of your vocabulary, but take it out of your mind as an option. Now, that's one thing that right from the beginning, it was never an option for us. We never talked about through that as a weapon. Or even considered it privately in your mind. Susan didn't do that. I didn't do that. We never thought about that as an option. And as I said that day in that message, if divorce is not an option, then it only leaves you with married and in an unhealthy, dysfunctional misery, or finding a way to stay married and not be miserable.
Right.
And I think what a lot of people do is they throw around the option of, well, maybe this isn't going to work out, and that always becomes the path of least resistance.
Sure,
And,
like
it's why
get out of jail free card.
That's right,
kind of thing.
Well, and it's also using a cliche like get out of jail free. It's also the grass is greener on the other side.
Right.
So
right.
we think, oh my gosh, my next, either my next spouse would be better than this, or being single would be way better than this, and then the next thing you know, you're carrying all that stuff with you. And, and the conversation where I'm having with somebody is, why does this keep happening to me? Well, because you're not dealing with the fundamental things that are part of your internal junk, because we all got junk.
Right.
And if you'll go after that, then you can have a great marriage.
Absolutely. Well, y'all definitely have done the hard work. And as we continue this series on marriage, we're going to hear a lot more about it. We are going to talk about divorce coming up. So we'll dig into that a little more. I wanted to kind of wrap up with one more quote from the book, because I think it's actually a good segue into what our next episode is going to be about. And Gary Chapman, he says this: people tend to criticize their spouse most loudly in the area where they themselves have the deepest emotional need. Next week, we're going to look at another book that's been influential to you. I promise it's not going to be all book reviews, y'all, okay? But these particular books have been really meaningful to you. They have a lot to offer just based on how they've kind of become in the lexicon. And that quote right there, I think, serves as a good cliffhanger for what we're going to do next time. So if you enjoyed this, if you know somebody who could benefit from this, please make sure you follow, make sure you subscribe, make sure you share it. All those cliche things. I'm not going to say it all the time, but especially as we get started, be super helpful for you to just share this out, to let people know we're here, and to point them in this direction, because we're really excited about what's coming. So thank you for being here. Thank you, Brian, for all your insight, and we will see you next time.